Karie, welcome. I'm excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Julia. Always a pleasure.
I know it's always fun to talk to you. So, you guys, the reason I brought Karie onto the magazine this year is because authors, for the most part, are entrepreneurs. And we do a lot of really bad things to keep ourselves going that we don't even realize in the process of all of this. And I think I've mentioned on the show before, and definitely when Karie was here with her book, that, I've developed quite a sugar addiction. And I worked on that when Karie's book was in-house getting processed. But there are far more things besides that sugar addiction that are hurting entrepreneurs today. So, Karie, tell us a little bit about that cycle that you see entrepreneurs getting into when you're working with them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few cycles, I guess we'll say, but to niche it down in terms of nutrition, probably what I get to hear the most often is, "Gosh, I'm just so tired." And the tiredness leads to that's why I didn't have time to prep meals or workout slash activity slash walking. And yet those are the remedies for the tiredness, ironically. And so when usually someone's saying, "I'm so tired, I'm managing so many things at once, I'm multitasking," and they're at the risk of burnout, really. Often I feel like the wording matters to say, really what you're after is more energy. Because with
Mhm.
more energy, we tend to be very creative with our time. We tend to have this ability to stay sustained and achieve many things. And entrepreneurs are wearing so many hats. And I think that's so important to have that sustainable energy. I think we forget because we're so, I don't know about you, I'm at a desk, I'm at a computer, and our mind is being completely stimulated, fulfilled, and maybe overstimulated could be another way of looking at it. And the body is sitting and needing fuel. And we kind of forget that we have this body. It's almost like we kind of just go into our head, staring at what we're doing and taking for granted, I guess would be one way of saying that we still have a pumping heart. There's still lungs that are inflating. Our brain is functioning, and all of that is like a vehicle needing gasoline. Like we just need fuel. So it would be kind of typical to see people maybe nibbling at the desk to save time, because again, time being this precious thing. So it's grabbing the M&Ms, drinking a diet soda, and there seems to be like a temporary fix, maybe that because there's an extra hunger come along and low sugar typically that goes with it. And we do know, at least subconsciously, to grab something. I mean, the body's going to send up some cravings in order for that to be fixed. And it doesn't mean we fixed it properly. It's a temporary fix. A lot of sugary foods only digest for so long in the body as it is. So, what I've noticed is that we might be not eating enough in terms of the sustenance, or as often, and probably worse if I really start at the very beginning of where this could really, rather than at the symptom level, go to the root, is it's mindless eating. And in the mindless eating, we're breathing very differently too. So we're all familiar with the fight flight response, and it was what was absolutely required and still is today, but nowhere near like it was. So we needed it for fending off animals and being able to eat. I mean, we survived because of it. But the fight flight with our spouse, the teenager, coworker, or the deadline that we're trying to meet, all of it is creating a shallow breathing. And I think we know this. I mean, instinctively, we're like, I hardly breathed through that. I was just sort of maintaining this shallow breathing, and that's creating a cascade of hormones like cortisol, which is stressing the body. And a lack of a better way of saying it, it's stressing the heart. And when we're eating under the fight flight response, it's actually the worst time to be digesting. It shuts down. Back in the day, and especially if anybody who's done any running knows that if they're eating while running, it doesn't work out very well. They're making a few pit stops, let's put it that way. And we know that there's another way. It's called the rest digest. The word digest is right in the title, and create zone. And we do access that by how we breathe. So just by breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, like you're going through a straw, we begin to switch on the opposite system of the fight flight response called the parasympathetic. I won't say that one anymore. It's just the rest digest create zone. Why am I saying all this? Well, the word digest is in that. And so if we're multitasking at the desk, entrepreneur or anything else for that matter, even if we're in the house cleaning and eating, it's the same sort of thing. It's not the time for digestion. And we're mindlessly eating versus mindfully eating. And I say all that again to say that if we stop and just sort of did that breathing, we'd actually maybe tune into our proper hunger cues. We would tune into, what am I actually craving? Am I really looking for the sugar? Is there a reason I'm looking for the sugar? Have I eaten or not? And it's just asking those questions and then proceeding onwards. I think most people have probably heard by this point that sitting is the new smoking. So that in and of itself, it's one thing to talk about the sugar, but it's another just that we are eating in the wrong way, the wrong things, the wrong places. And if we just start from the beginning, I think I would love to think that we're going to reset hunger cues again and go through what I call a craving checklist to find out what's the body really saying. And then us entrepreneurs can achieve our things. We'd have the energy, we'd have the sustainability, because that walk is also going to give you energy. So it's kind of cleaning up the lifestyle a little bit. We have kicked the sugar habits and things like that we can start with. But honestly, I feel like we're missing a few steps if that's where we begin. It's not wrong. It's just missing key points, I feel.
Yeah.
I know that you've conquered the sugar habit in many different ways and experience.
No, I haven't. But it's funny. It's funny you brought up running because you guys are going to laugh at this. When I ran the LA Marathon, which was my first marathon, I had no idea that there were people along the way that were holding food out for energy. And literally, as I was running, I had oranges, I had licorice. I told somebody who tried to offer me a Coke that I only drank diet, and they're like, no, honey, you need the sugar.
You
I
do,
kid
yeah.
you not. I woke up the next day and I had gained 4 pounds. And granted, some of it is probably the water weight from the inflammation, but let's just say that I ate my way through the LA Marathon. And I kind of think of that, it's like sitting at your desk the same way, because you were mentioning running, that you're not even thinking about, oh, what am I putting in my mouth? Oh, is that fattening? Oh, is it, you're just looking for that energy desperately. And I'm sure that quite a few entrepreneurs start gaining a little bit of weight along the way as well.
Yeah, combination of things. It sounds almost like old fashioned now to say the word mindful eating. Like now when it first started to be a term that we would use, it seemed sexy enough, but now it's overly used. And if I just say, well, just anchor for a moment. One thing's for sure. When a craving rises, there's neurotransmitters and hormones all occurring at the same time that last about the length of a song, 90 seconds roughly, actually. So there are some times I'll say, you have this craving and you want to maybe get empowered versus using willpower energy, and start with setting a timer, listening to a song first, and then asking, and what's really going on here? Am I looking for a crunch? Am I dehydrated? And anyone craving salt, that could be the clue right there. That could be very well dehydrated, which can come off like hunger. And then they could be asking, if it's sugar I'm craving, then have I eaten? And just more empowering questions. Is it chocolate I'm craving? Well, is that different to sugar? Yes, it is actually. And it tends to be more hormone related. Did I have a good enough sleep? Did I, because serotonin's produced wonderfully through our sleep, and often sugar cravings are one hormonal pathway, but chocolate, it's usually serotonin. Not always, but it's something to check with. And a lot of women on their cycle will certainly say it's around that time that I'm really looking for chocolate. Clue there, right there. That's hormones. And I feel like just separating it out is letting your body speak to you. It has so much wisdom. It's very intelligent. And when we learn to clue in, we can say, I can have some sugar. It's not about kicking it to the curb. It's about curbing it. And I feel like we can invite this 80-20 rule. So it's not about no M&Ms, and it's not about no to the enjoying a coffee with whatever that might be for you. But fuel first. Taking that deep breath will activate the serotonin as well. The rest, digest, create zone means you'll also maybe have more creative thoughts around it. It's so simple to just breathe before you eat. And it's a habit I would love to be able to create on this planet, because our default to the fight flight response served us well once upon a time. But why not default now into what's called that parasympathetic zone? And we could become better digesters, and we probably have way less digestive disorders. way less heart disease, right? Because cortisol is not being produced the same when we're under that pathway. Now, I got really sciencey on you there.
You did, but here's the thing. I think I just learned that I'm not a sugar whore. I may be sleep deprived because my thing is chocolate. So there you go. I've been redeemed. I've been redeemed. Thank you. The other thing too is I'm reading, as you get older, you start reading more and more about what's going to keep me and my brain, mostly brain function is what I look into, it really accelerating aging. And when I look at it, a lot of it seems to be foods that are natural versus processed foods. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think one of the things that really struck me is I was looking at this study during COVID. Very few Amish people, only one died from COVID in this study. And they don't eat chicken nuggets and, Stouffer's lasagna. They go out and they farm, they work hard, and everything is natural. So tell us a little bit about that, because I don't think that processed food is something we should be going for either.
Yeah, that's multi-layered as well. First, we'll start with they also have great sleep habits. They're physically active, doing what you just described. So there's sleeping, and what's really natural is oxygen. So they're also doing a lot of that wonderful deep sleep, which does lead to you are fuller longer. There's more hunger when there's lack of sleep, put it that way. So starting with that. And remember, I said earlier that often we're saying we don't have time and we're not wanting to cook prepared meals, which can lead to that processed world more so. So it's one thing for me to say eat whole, but then the remedy is cooking. And that can lead to this, well, I don't have time. So yeah, go back to the beginning here and begin thinking about how to manage time in terms of energy. Okay. Now with carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, I'm not one to pick on either one of them. Ironically, I was reading the Nutritional Almanac book when I was 13 years old, thinking it was normal, learning about the vitamins. So all along in these last few decades, I was privy to be in the 80s when carbohydrates were the best. And then the 90s were all about fat. It started off with cold pressed oils and omega-3s and yay, let's have that. And halfway through it was like diet, low fat, cut the fat. And then into the next decade became the proteins. So I say all that because what was missing in the conversations and still is the micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, the fiber. And whole foods have all of those by proxy. So, the apples have certain types of fiber inside and outside. They have vitamin C, the wonderful components. The juice already misses some of that because the fiber is stripped away. That's a processed food right there. And then we can look at rice, which has the normal brown hull on it. Well, you process that and take the hull off. That's the fiber because we want instant rice, apparently. And it's quicker to cook when you take off the fiber. But now you're missing the fiber. And in that is also nutrition. So what's happening with the processed foods is we're stripping away the vitamin D's and K's and C's and so forth. And then we don't have that weaponry against what is required to fight off certain illnesses. Our immune system is very equipped at fighting off, but not if we haven't worked with it. And it's one thing to think that it's there just by default. The body works in such a way that it protects first your core, what your heart needs, what your brain needs, what your lungs need. You would think immune system's right in that category, but no, it's become secondary. Ooh. It first takes care of what you absolutely need to live with first. Heart stops, guess what, right? If your immune system starts to lower, you can still survive for a length of time. It just makes you tired so that you'll preserve your energy. So there's little clues. Why am I so tired lately? Well, have I been sleeping? Yes. Eating enough? And what about my nutrition period? And that could, by the way, tie us right back to the beginning, which is why we might have cravings, low in certain nutrition. So I personally want and work with people to build meal planning around the vitamins. Knock off this discussion about the macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and picking on them. Let's look first at the vitamins because they're inside of all of those big giants. Take away a carb, you're taking away vitamins. Take away protein, you're taking away vitamins. Take away fat, same thing. So I call it a flexitarian way of eating, so we can include our mighty army of vitamins and minerals. We're not having enough discussions about that. If we focused on eating that to its adequacy, we wouldn't have the discussion about immune health and heart disease near the same, guaranteed.
Interesting. So let's just, for someone who's listening, sitting at my desk today, feeling a little stressed, what are those really good snacks that people could grab? And I realize I think one of them you're going to say you may or may not be about. I know you're going to throw nuts in there, right? Probably.
Well, what I usually like to do is, at the very least, I like to combine carbohydrates and proteins.
Okay.
It's for a few reasons. So let's just say that you're having crackers, and we're gonna hope that they're like a higher fiber cracker, and they're not really loaded with a bunch of salt and so forth. Let's just start there.
Okay.
Let's just say that for a moment. That by itself is insufficient in the way that it's going to give you fuel, yes, but it's not going to die. It's only going to be in your system maybe 30, 40 minutes, something like that. So for sustainability, I'm going to suggest a protein that combines with it, because protein takes 2 to 3 hours to digest. That's only one reason. The other is I'm sneaking in more nutrition. So if you had a baby bell cheese or some sort of combined protein with it, you're getting the protein itself, you're getting calcium, maybe phosphorus, depending on what you're combining with. So I prefer combining food groups. So the apple with peanut butter, the banana with the same idea, so that we're getting sustainability, more nutrition, and it's moving a little closer to being a meal. And that's what I'm figuring with entrepreneurs. I'm noticing, well, I kind of really didn't have breakfast, or I kind of did, but it really today wouldn't be called that. It'd be called a snack. I kind of had lunch, but not really. I was eating at my desk, and then I put it aside because my client came in. And I think it's at supper time that we eat our main meal. So I think we're going long times without proper eating, which leads to another set of questions, but called intermittent fasting. And is that good or bad or otherwise? That could be another thing we elaborate on. But it's not working if we're tired. It's not working if we're having cravings. If we're trying to fix a boat that's broken, we go to those remedies first. And so carbohydrate, protein, it could be a trail mix that is made up. That can be really high in calories. And so depending on who you are and what your goal is, my suggestion then is to dilute that down with other items, pretzels. I actually add like an iron fortified cereal maybe to it, because it's lower calorie and I'm also getting iron. So there's tricks up my sleeve. Usually what I'll do is I'll start looking at your actual sugar intake. Are you adding a lot of sugar? Is it masking as if you're eating? Because that the brain might be thinking, oh, all's good. Don't need to send the hunger cues anymore. And I actually, as part of this, I'm going to be gifting ways of looking at sugar and curbing it and stepwising, just as I described, where we look at 5 tips, which is asking the question, pause, breathe. Am I actually hungry? Am I dehydrated? Have a cup of water. And then wait 5 minutes or so, a song's worth. Is this truly something that I'm actually craving? What else is really going on? Being out, asking those questions. And then actually moving into potentially having a carbohydrate protein snack. Still hungry or still craving? Then I have this suggestion where I help you label read to understand how many sugar cubes equivalent you're having in what you're craving. And then I'll usually suggest have that item, the equivalent of about 3 sugar cubes. You might ask, how do I know how to do that?
I was like, how do you measure that?
Okay, so on labels, we're fortunate we have information on them. And if you go and look at the total carbohydrate, don't just look at the sugar. You're missing a lot of information if you just look at the sugar. Look at the sugar amount and divide that by 5. Round up the number, round down the number. So if the label says 10 grams of sugar or 10 grams of carbohydrate, divide that by 5. It's equivalent to 2 cubes of sugar. And I'm lying a little bit, just so y'all know.
Not allowed to lie on my show.
The lying is I divide by 5 because it's easy math. It's technically should be divided by 4. So if we're really splitting hairs, divide it by 4 if you wish. But if I'm in a grocery store, I want to quickly see how many cubes of sugar that is. I'm better with my math to round the number up to 15 or 20 and divide that by 5. It's quick, it's easy, and it's accurate enough. So again, if the label says 20 grams of carbohydrate, divide that by 5, 4 cubes of sugar. And that's a really good place to begin. It's not the be all and end all, because we haven't talked about other parts of that label, but it is a great place to begin. And if those M&Ms, you'll see how many that would mean you can have in terms of the equivalent of 3 cubes of sugar. The
my God,
apple is about 3 cubes of sugar, so it makes it safe to have the fruit as well by using that root.
And I never look at the back of a candy package. I have to admit there. So you have 2 new programs coming up, the Domino Diet Formula and Cracking the Craving Code, which it sounds like I need to go back to school with Cracking the Craving Code. Is there some place where people can reach out and find out? I know you're not quite ready to bring those up yet, but to get on a waiting list, or do you have something that, how can they contact you to find out more about those things that are coming up? And what are those programs like? I mean, what do you do in them?
Yeah. I have a variety of programs, and it's sort of meeting you where you're at as to what program you might launch into. If sugar's not your problem or craving isn't the issue, we maybe look at the whole world of dieting, period, which I love to tell everyone, hey, that true meaning of the word diet comes from the Greek word dieta, which means a way of life. So I help create your way of life. And I say that because we have Christmases, we have job losses, we have other things, we have celebrations that we want to work into as opposed to pretend we're veering away from.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. To make it really simple for anyone listening, I've created a landing page where it's kariecassell.com/sugar, and you'll find a resource there, but also all walks of life in terms of my courses. That's one
That's
way to
great.
get it.
Oh, good. Okay. And Karie is Karie, which I know all of you, like so many ways to spell Karie now, and spell your last name for us so we know where to get to your site, because it's kariecassell.com/sugar.
Sugar, yeah. So Karie. Cassell is Cassell. And anyone who is not getting the pen and paper down quick enough, anything the Domino Diet, which is pretty easy to remember, you'll find me.
Yeah, very good. And that's an amazing book, you guys. And I think I don't think you know this, but the end of the year podcast, your book is one of the top 5 must reads for 2024 or 2023.
Oh.
But I hadn't told you that yet, but you probably were going to listen to it because this comes on after. But I want to mention that to you because it's not your typical diet book where you're just bored to death with, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Karie has this wonderful sense of humor. It's funny. Some of the antidotes in it are very funny too. I mean, they're very compassionate because of course there are people having problems, but they're very funny. I think in it you make fun of your own husband and drinking, don't you?
Yeah.
I seem to remember that. She transformed her husband's life with this diet. So it is
Sure.
really, she knows it's something that works. It's been tested. So Karie, thank you so much for being on today. And you guys, go grab Breakthrough Author Magazine. Karie's going to have tips for us every month in 2024. And it's going to be a really stressful year with all that's going on in the world. So get beyond and figure out, what's triggering you and how you can get rid of that trigger and not eat your way through 2024.
Yes. Yeah, we will discover you're not as flawed as you might think. There's something else going on. We can fix that.
Yeah,
My
that's
pleasure.
great.
Thank
Thanks
you so much for having me.
You're welcome.